The evening sun was painting the sky orange when Agent Devin Hayes turned onto Maple Street. He'd just spent the afternoon with his mother, helping her fix the leaky faucet in her kitchen. It was one of those peaceful Sunday evenings where everything felt right with the world. Devin had loosened his tie hours ago, rolled up his sleeves, and was looking forward to getting home to catch the game. His black sedan moved smoothly through the quiet neighborhood. Kids were riding bikes on the sidewalk. An elderly couple was walking their dog. Everything seemed normal. Devin had worked for the FBI for almost 8 years now, and he knew how to read situations. This neighborhood felt safe, calm, unremarkable. But someone else was watching him too. Officer Rick Donnelly sat in his patrol car at the corner of Maple and Fifth. He'd been having a slow day, the kind that made him restless. When he saw Devin's car pass by, something clicked in his mind. Maybe it was the tinted windows. Maybe it was the fact that he didn't recognize the vehicle, or maybe it was something else entirely, something he wouldn't admit even to himself. Rick pulled out from his spot and followed Devin's car for 2 blocks. He watched the way it moved, looking for any excuse, any reason to justify what he was already planning to do. The car didn't swerve. It didn't speed. The driver used turn signals properly. Everything was by the book. Then Rick flipped on his lights. Devin saw the flashing red and blue in his rearview mirror and felt his stomach tighten. He wasn't speeding. He knew his car was in perfect condition. He'd just had it inspected last month. But this feeling, this familiar tension, it wasn't new to him. He'd been pulled over before for no good reason. Being a black man in America meant these moments came with the territory, badge or no badge. He took a deep breath and started looking for a safe place to pull over. The street was residential with cars parked on both sides. He drove slowly for another 100 feet until he found a spot with enough room. He put on his hazard lights, came to a complete stop, and placed both hands on the steering wheel where they could be clearly seen. This was the routine. Keep your hands visible. Don't make sudden movements. Stay calm. He'd taught his younger brother these same rules years ago. Now here he was, an FBI agent, still having to follow them. What Devin didn't know was that his car was equipped with something special. As part of a pilot program in his field office, certain vehicles had been fitted with advanced recording systems. Front camera, rear camera, audio recording, everything. The system had activated automatically the moment he was pulled over. Every word, every movement, every second of what was about to happen would be captured in perfect clarity. Rick took his time getting out of the patrol car. He adjusted his belt, checked his radio, and put on his sunglasses even though the sun was already low on the horizon. He wanted to make sure this driver knew who was in charge here. He'd been a cop for 12 years and he'd developed certain instincts about people. At least that's what he told himself. As Rick approached the driver's side window, his hand rested on his weapon. This was standard procedure, he'd say if anyone asked. Officer safety, you never know what you're walking into. But there was something in his posture, something in the set of his jaw that suggested this was more than just procedure. Devin watched him approach in the side mirror. The officer's body language was already aggressive. Devin had interviewed enough suspects, witnessed enough interrogations to read people. This wasn't going to be a friendly conversation. He pressed the button to lower his window, keeping his other hand on the steering wheel. The window came down slowly. "License and registration," Rick barked before the window was even halfway down. No greeting, no explanation for the stop. Just a command delivered in a tone that expected immediate obedience. "Good evening, officer," Devin said calmly. "Can you tell me why you pulled me over?" "I asked for your license and registration," Rick repeated, his voice harder now. "You got a problem with that?" Devin felt the familiar weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. He could play this several ways. He could pull out his FBI credentials right away. But experience told him that sometimes that made things worse. Some local cops didn't like federal agents. Some took it as a challenge to their authority. Or he could just comply, get through this, and be on his way. "No problem, officer," Devin said evenly. "I'm going to reach for my wallet now. It's in my inside jacket pocket. Keep your hands where I can see them." Rick's voice suddenly rose sharply. "My hands are on the steering wheel, sir," Devin said, his heart rate climbing. "I need to reach for my wallet to get my license. I'm just letting you know what I'm doing." "Step out of the car," Rick ordered, his hand now gripping his weapon. This wasn't normal procedure for a routine traffic stop. Devin knew it. Rick probably knew it too. but knowing it and being able to do something about it were two different things. "Officer, can you please tell me what violation I committed?" Devin kept his voice steady, professional. "I'd like to understand why I was pulled over." "Your taillight is out," Rick said. "That's a violation. Now step out of the vehicle." Devin knew his taillights were fine. He'd driven past a storefront window just 2 blocks ago and glanced at the reflection out of habit. Both lights were working perfectly. This was a pretense, and they both knew it. "Officer, I'm going to be straight with you," Devin said carefully. "I'm a federal agent. My credentials are in my wallet. I'm going to slowly reach for them and show you. Is that okay?" The moment the words federal agent left Devin's mouth, Rick's entire demeanor changed, but not in the way Devin hoped. Instead of relief or professional courtesy, Rick's face hardened. His hand moved to his holster. "Keep your hands on the wheel," Rick shouted. "Don't you move." "I'm not moving," Devin said, his pulse pounding now. "I'm just trying to identify myself." "I said don't move." Rick's weapon was out now, pointed directly at Devin through the open window. "Hands on the wheel." "Do it now." Time seemed to slow down. Devin stared at the barrel of the gun pointed at his face. He was an FBI agent. He'd been in dangerous situations before. He'd chased suspects, executed warrants, faced down armed criminals. But sitting here in his own car, in a quiet neighborhood on a Sunday evening after visiting his mother, staring down the barrel of a police officer's gun, this felt different. This felt surreal. His hands remained frozen on the steering wheel. He could barely breathe. One wrong move, one misunderstood gesture, and this could end in a way that would destroy not just his life but his family's lives too. His mother waiting for his call to say he got home safe. His wife, probably starting dinner right now. His daughter, doing her homework at the kitchen table. All of it could end right here, right now, because of a traffic stop that should never have happened in the first place. And somewhere in the dashboard of his car, a camera was recording everything. The gun didn't waver. Officer Rick Donnelly stood there, his weapon pointed through the window, his finger near the trigger. Devin could see the tension in the officer's arms, the way his jaw was clenched. This situation was balanced on a knife's edge, and Devin knew that the wrong word, the wrong movement, could send everything spiraling into tragedy. "Officer, please listen to me," Devin said, his voice carefully controlled despite the fear coursing through his body. "I'm not a threat. I'm a federal agent. I need to show you my credentials." "You don't tell me what you need to do," Rick shouted back. "I'm in charge here. You understand me?"
"I'm the one with the badge."
The irony of that statement wasn't lost on Devin. He had a badge too, a federal badge that technically outranked this local officer. But none of that mattered right now. The only thing that mattered was the gun pointed at his face and the man holding it, who seemed determined to see him as a threat rather than a colleague. "I understand, sir," Devin said. He'd dropped the officer and gone to sir, trying to de-escalate. "I'm not trying to challenge you. I just want to show you who I am." "Where's the gun?" Rick demanded. "I know you've got a gun in there." "Where is it?" Devin did have his service weapon. It was in the glove compartment, exactly where it was supposed to be when he was off duty. But telling Rick that would only make things worse right now. "I'm not armed," Devin said, which was technically true. The gun was in the car, not on his person. "I'm complying with everything you're asking. My hands are on the wheel. I haven't made any sudden movements. Get out of the car." "Now." Rick's voice had risen to a near scream. Spit flew from his mouth. His free hand was reaching for his radio. Devin's mind raced. If he got out of the car, he'd be more vulnerable. If he stayed in the car, Rick might perceive it as refusal to comply. There was no good option here. Every choice felt like it could be the wrong one. "I'm going to step out slowly," Devin said. "I'm going to open the door with my left hand. My right hand will stay visible at all times. Is that acceptable?" Rick didn't answer. He just kept the gun trained on Devin and took a step back to give himself a better angle. His radio was in his other hand now. "Dispatch." "This is Unit 47, Rick said into his radio, never taking his eyes off Devin. "I need backup at Maple and 5th. I've got a suspicious individual, possibly armed, refusing to comply. Send at least 2 units. Devin's heart sank. Backup meant more officers, more guns, more chances for this to go wrong. And Rick had just painted him as dangerous, as someone refusing to comply, when Devin had done nothing but follow instructions and keep his hands visible. "Officer, That's not accurate, Devin tried to interject. I'm complying. I'm a federal— Shut up! Rick cut him off. I don't want to hear another word from you. Devin closed his mouth. There was no reasoning with Rick right now. The officer had already decided who Devin was, what he represented, what kind of threat he posed. Nothing Devin said was going to change that. The only thing that might help now was time and the arrival of other officers who might be more level-headed. Through his side mirror, Devin could see a few neighbors had come out of their houses. An older woman stood on her porch with her phone out. A teenage boy was watching from behind a tree. They were witnesses, which was both good and bad. Good because there would be people who saw what happened. Bad because if this went wrong, they'd see that too. The wait for backup felt like an eternity, though it was probably only 3 or 4 minutes. Devin kept his hands on the wheel, didn't speak, barely breathed. His mind kept drifting to his family. His wife, Lisa, who'd already lost her father to a heart attack last year. She couldn't lose her husband, too. His daughter, Kira, who was only 9 years old. She needed her father. He thought about his mother just a few blocks away who'd hugged him goodbye only 20 minutes ago. She'd told him to drive safe like she always did. Drive safe. As if following traffic laws was enough to keep him safe. As if being a good driver, a good person, a federal agent even, was enough. The sound of sirens broke through his thoughts. 2 more patrol cars were approaching fast, their lights painting the street in flashing colors. They pulled up behind Rick's car, and 4 officers jumped out. Devin could see them in his mirrors, their hands on their weapons as they approached. Rick was talking to them, his voice urgent and animated. Devin couldn't hear exactly what he was saying, but he could guess. He was telling them about the dangerous suspect who wouldn't comply, who claimed to be a federal agent who was acting suspicious. He was building a narrative, creating a story that would justify everything he'd done. The new officers spread out, 2 on each side of Devin's car. They all had their hands on their weapons, though they hadn't drawn them yet. One of them, a younger officer who looked barely old enough to shave, approached the passenger side window. "Sir, we need you to step out of the vehicle," the young officer said. His voice was shaky, nervous. "Please keep your hands where we can see them." Devin nodded slowly. "I'm going to open my door now," he said clearly, making sure all the officers could hear him. "I'm moving slowly. My hands will stay visible." He reached for the door handle with his left hand, keeping his right hand pressed against the steering wheel. The door opened with a click that sounded impossibly loud in the tense silence. He swung his legs out, still moving in slow motion, and stood up carefully. "Hands on the car," one of the officers behind him commanded. "Spread your legs." Devin complied, placing his palms flat on the roof of his car. He felt hands patting him down, checking for weapons. The hands were rough, not gentle, pushing and probing. He stared straight ahead, refusing to react, refusing to give them any excuse. "He's clean," the young officer announced. "Check the car," Rick ordered. "He said something about a gun." "Officer, I did not say—" Devin started, but Rick cut him off again. "I said be quiet." One of the officers was already opening the passenger door, reaching for the glove compartment. Devin's stomach dropped. His service weapon was in there, along with his FBI credentials. When they found it, this could either get better or much, much worse. The officer pulled out the glove compartment contents. Devin's registration, his insurance card, his wallet, and then his FBI credentials, the leather case falling open to show his badge and identification card. The officer stared at it for a long moment. "He's FBI," the officer said, his voice uncertain. "He's a federal agent." There was a moment of silence. Devin could feel the energy shift among the officers. Some of them took a step back, their hands moving away from their weapons. But Rick didn't move. His gun was still out, still pointed in Devin's general direction. "I don't care what he says he is," Rick said. He was acting suspicious. He matched a description we got earlier. That was a lie, and everyone there probably knew it. There had been no description. There had been no call. There had just been a black man driving through a white neighborhood, and a cop who decided that was enough of a reason to pull him over. "Sir, we're going to need you to put your hands behind your back," one of the officers said to Devin, though his tone was less aggressive now, more uncertain. "You're handcuffing me?" Devin asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I'm a federal agent. I've done nothing wrong. I've complied with every command." "It's just procedure," the officer said, but he didn't sound convinced himself. Devin felt the cold metal of handcuffs click around his wrists. The humiliation of it burned through him like acid. He was standing on a public street in front of his neighbors, handcuffed like a criminal. Because of what? A fabricated taillight violation? Because Rick Donnelly had decided he looked suspicious? They walked him to the curb and made him sit down. The concrete was hard and cold beneath him. His hands were locked behind his back, the cuffs digging into his wrists. Around him, the officers were talking in low voices, trying to figure out what to do now that they'd realized their suspect was actually one of them, a federal agent. Rick was still arguing that he'd done everything by the book. Officer safety, he kept saying. The suspect was uncooperative. He was acting strange, all the usual justifications, all the familiar excuses. But inside Devin's car, mounted discreetly in the dashboard, a camera had captured every single moment. Every word Rick had shouted, every lie he'd told, every second of Devin sitting here in handcuffs for the crime of driving while black. The truth was being recorded, and soon, everyone would see it. Devin sat on the curb, hands cuffed behind his back, watching the circus unfold around him. More neighbors had come out now. Phones were pointed in his direction. Some were recording, some were just watching. He wondered what they saw. Did they see an FBI agent being wrongfully detained, or did they just see what Rick Donnelly wanted them to see? A suspect being lawfully apprehended. The 5 officers stood in a cluster near Rick's patrol car, their voices rising and falling as they debated what to do next. Devin could catch bits and pieces of their conversation. Someone mentioned calling a supervisor. Someone else suggested just letting him go with a warning. But Rick's voice kept cutting through, insistent and defensive. Officer Bradley Chen, one of the officers who'd arrived as backup, kept glancing over at Devin with an uncomfortable expression. He was younger than Rick, maybe in his late 20s, with the kind of face that suggested he'd joined the force because he genuinely wanted to help people. Right now, though, he looked like a man realizing he'd walked into something he wanted no part of. "This doesn't feel right," Bradley said quietly to his partner. "Officer Nina Reeves." "Keep your voice down," Nina warned. She was in her mid-30s, practical and cautious. "Rick's a senior officer. He knows what he's doing, does he?" Bradley looked back at Devin. "That guy's been nothing but cooperative. And he's FBI, we just handcuffed a federal agent." "We don't know the whole story," Nina said. But even she didn't sound convinced. Rick was still talking to the other officers, his hands moving animatedly as he explained his version of events. The guy was acting suspicious from the start. Wouldn't answer my questions directly. Kept making movements toward his jacket. I had every reason to believe he was armed and dangerous. That wasn't true, and the recording in Devin's car would prove it. But for now, Rick's version was the one the other officers were hearing, and some of them were nodding along, accepting it without question. Officer Tom Bradford, a veteran who'd been on the force almost as long as Rick, was the most vocal in his support. "You did the right thing, Rick. Officer safety comes first. Doesn't matter if he's FBI or not. If he wasn't complying, you had to take control of the situation." "Exactly," Rick said, relief evident in his voice. "That's exactly what I did." Devin listened to all of this from the curb. Every word made his anger grow, but he forced himself to stay calm. Losing his temper now would only make things worse. They wanted him to react, to give them a reason to escalate this further. He wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Bradley Chen finally broke away from the group and walked over to Devin. He crouched down so they were at eye level. "Sir, I need to ask you some questions," Bradley said, his tone apologetic. "What were you doing in this neighborhood?" "Visiting my mother," Devin said. "She lives 3 blocks from here on Cherry Street. I was helping her fix a faucet." Bradley nodded. "And why didn't you immediately identify yourself as FBI when Officer Donnelly pulled you over?" "I tried to," Devin said, meeting Bradley's eyes. "I told him I was a federal agent. I told him my credentials were in my wallet. That's when he pulled his gun on me." Bradley's expression flickered. That wasn't the story Rick had told. "He said you were making suspicious movements," Bradley said. "My hands never left the steering wheel except when I was trying to get my wallet to show him my ID." Devin replied, "You can ask him, did I make any sudden moves? Did I threaten him in any way?" Bradley stood up without answering. He walked back to the other officers, and Devin watched as he pulled Nina aside, speaking to her in low tones. Nina's face showed doubt now, too. She glanced at Devin, then at Rick, then back at Bradley. The dynamic among the officers was shifting. Some of them were starting to realize this didn't add up. But Rick had already committed to his story, and backing down now would mean admitting he'd been wrong. Men like Rick didn't admit they were wrong. They doubled down. "Look, we can stand here all day debating this," Rick said loudly. "Bottom line is, I made a traffic stop. The driver failed to comply properly. I secured the situation. Now we can either process him or let him go with a citation. Either way, I followed procedure." "What traffic violation?" Bradley asked. The question hung in the air. "Broken tail light," Rick said without hesitation. "I checked his taillights," Nina said quietly. "They're both working fine." Rick's face reddened. "Well, maybe it was intermittent. Maybe it's working now, but it wasn't before. Are you questioning my judgment, Officer Reeves?" Nina backed down, not wanting to challenge a senior officer directly. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Tom Bradford jumped in to support Rick. "Listen, this is getting out of hand. The man's been checked out. He's FBI, fine, we made a mistake. It happens. Let's uncuff him, give him a warning about proper identification procedures, and we all move on." That was the moment when Devin knew they were going to try to cover this up. They weren't going to admit what had really happened. They were going to paint this as a simple misunderstanding, a routine stop that got a little out of hand because Devin hadn't identified himself properly. They'd flip the script and make it his fault. Bradley walked back over to Devin and helped him to his feet. "We're going to remove the handcuffs now, sir. I apologize for the inconvenience. Inconvenience. That's what Bradley called it. Not a violation of rights. Not racial profiling. Not an armed officer threatening an unarmed federal agent. An inconvenience." The cuffs came off and Devin rubbed his wrists where the metal had dug into his skin. He could feel the eyes of all the neighbors on him. The teenage boy was still recording on his phone. "Good. Let him record. Let everyone see." Rick walked over, trying to project authority he no longer deserved. "Sir, I'm going to issue you a warning citation for failure to properly identify yourself during a traffic stop." Devin looked at him for a long moment. "You're giving me a citation?" "That's correct," Rick said. "You need to learn proper procedure when being pulled over. When an officer asks for identification, you provide it immediately." "I tried to provide it," Devin said, his voice dangerously quiet. "You pulled a gun on me before I could." "That's not how I remember it," Rick said. "But hey, we're all just trying to do our jobs here. No hard feelings, right?" "No hard feelings." The man had pointed a gun at his face, handcuffed him, humiliated him in front of his neighbors, and now wanted to act like they were just two professionals who'd had a minor miscommunication. Devin took the citation Rick was holding out. He didn't sign it. He just held it in his hand and looked at the officers standing around him. Nina looked uncomfortable. Bradley looked guilty. Tom looked defensive. And Rick looked satisfied, like a man who believed he'd gotten away with something. "Are we done here?" Devin asked. "You're free to go," Rick said. "Drive safe now." The casualness of it, the dismissiveness, it was almost worse than the gun had been. At least the gun had been honest in its threat. This false pleasantness was an insult. Devin walked back to his car. His legs felt shaky, the adrenaline finally starting to wear off. He got in, closed the door, and sat there for a moment, just breathing. His hands were trembling now that nobody could see them. Behind him, he could hear the officers talking among themselves. They thought this was over. They thought they'd handled it. Rick was probably already thinking about how he'd write up his report, spinning the story to make himself look justified. What none of them knew was that every second of their conversation after they'd released him was still being recorded. The camera in Devin's car had captured Rick handing him that fake citation. It had recorded Tom suggesting they all move on. It had caught Bradley's and Nina's doubts and their eventual decision to stay quiet. Devin started his car and pulled away from the curb slowly. In his rearview mirror, he saw the officers dispersing, getting back into their cars. Rick was laughing about something with Tom. They looked relaxed, relieved. They thought this was just another day on the job. But as Devin drove home, his hands still shaking on the steering wheel, he made a decision. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. He had evidence. He had proof. And he was going to make sure that what happened today didn't happen to anyone else. The hidden camera had given him something powerful. The truth. Unfiltered, undeniable recorded truth, and he was going to use it. His phone rang. It was his wife, Lisa, probably calling to see if he'd be home for dinner. Devin looked at the phone but didn't answer. He couldn't talk to her yet. Not until he'd processed what had just happened. Not until he could speak without his voice shaking. He'd call her back in a few minutes. He'd tell her he was okay. He'd tell her he loved her. And then, he'd tell her what he was about to do, because staying silent was no longer an option. Devin drove for 3 blocks before pulling over again. Not because anything was wrong with his car, but because his hands were shaking so badly he didn't trust himself to drive safely. He parked in front of a small park, the same park where he used to bring Kira when she was younger. The swings moved slightly in the evening breeze, empty now as the sun continued to set. He gripped the steering wheel and closed his eyes, trying to slow his breathing. The adrenaline was crashing now, leaving him feeling hollow and exhausted. His wrists still ached from the handcuffs. His pride ached even more. His phone buzzed again. Lisa calling for the 3rd time. He couldn't avoid her anymore. "Hey, honey," he answered, trying to keep his voice steady. "Devin, where are you? Dinner's getting cold." There was concern in her voice. She knew something was off. "I'm on my way home. Just had to make a quick stop. Is everything okay?" "You sound strange." He wanted to tell her everything right then. About Rick Donnelly and the gun and the handcuffs. About sitting on that curb like a criminal while his neighbors watched. But not over the phone. This conversation needed to happen face to face. "I'm fine," he lied. "I'll be home in 10 minutes. We'll talk then." After hanging up, Devin sat for another minute, then started the car again. As he drove, his mind replayed the scene over and over. Rick's face red with anger. The barrel of that gun. The cold metal of the handcuffs. The way the other officers had looked at him. Their expressions a mix of sympathy and suspicion and discomfort. But what stuck with him most was what happened after. The way they'd all stood around, deciding how to handle it. Not how to make it right. How to handle it. Like he was a problem to be managed rather than a colleague who'd been wronged. Devin pulled into his driveway just as full darkness settled over the neighborhood. The house was lit up, warm and welcoming. Through the window he could see Kira at the dining table, probably doing homework. Lisa was in the kitchen. Normal life, continuing like nothing had happened. He sat in the car for a moment longer, downloading the footage from his dash cam to a secure drive. The FBI had installed this system specifically for situations where agents might need evidence of their interactions with local law enforcement. It was supposed to be for undercover situations, for protection during field operations. He'd never imagined he'd need it just driving home from his mother's house. The download completed. Devin backed up the files to cloud storage as well, then finally got out of the car. Lisa met him at the door. She took one look at his face and knew something serious had happened. "Devin, what's wrong?" "Let me say goodnight to Kira first," he said. "Then we'll talk." He spent 15 minutes with his daughter asking about her day, checking her math homework, trying to be present and normal even though his mind was elsewhere. Kira chattered about her friend's birthday party and a test she'd aced and how her science teacher had let them do an experiment with vinegar and baking soda. Devin listened and smiled and hugged her tight when she went upstairs to get ready for bed. Then he sat down with Lisa in the living room and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her face growing more and more upset as the story unfolded. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "He pulled a gun on you," she finally said, her voice tight. "A cop pulled a gun on my husband for driving through a neighborhood. Yeah. You could have been killed." "I know. What if you'd moved wrong? What if you'd reached for your phone and he thought it was a weapon?" Her voice was rising now, anger and fear mixing together. "Devin, what if our daughter had to grow up without her father because some racist cop decided you looked suspicious?" "Lisa, I'm okay. I'm here, but you might not have been." She stood up, pacing the room. "This is exactly what we talked about. This is why I worry every time you leave the house. This is why I can't breathe easy until you call me to say you're safe." Devin didn't know what to say. She was right. They'd had this conversation before many times. About being careful. About being aware. About all the small ways he had to navigate the world differently because of the color of his skin. "I have the footage," he said. "Everything that happened is recorded." Lisa stopped pacing and looked at him. "What are you going to do with it?" "I'm going to report it. Tomorrow. I'm going to my supervisor and I'm filing a formal complaint with their internal affairs." "They'll protect him," Lisa said. "You know they will. Police protect their own." "Maybe, but I have to try. I can't let this go, Lisa. If I stay quiet, if I just accept that fake citation and move on, then I'm saying it's okay. I'm saying cops can do this to people without consequences. I'm scared, she admitted. What if it makes things worse? What if they retaliate? Then I'll deal with that too. But I can't be quiet about this. Not anymore. They talked for another hour, going in circles. Lisa was terrified of what might happen if Devin pushed this. He was terrified of what would happen if he didn't. Finally exhausted, they went to bed. Neither of them slept well. Meanwhile, across town, Rick Donnelly sat in his living room with a beer, feeling pretty good about himself. Sure, the situation had gotten a little heated, but he'd handled it. The guy turned out to be FBI, which was a surprise, but whatever. No harm done. The other officers had backed his version of events. Everyone was on the same page. His phone rang. It was Tom Bradford. Hey, Rick, just wanted to check in. You doing okay after tonight? Yeah, I'm fine. Why wouldn't I be? Just making sure we're all clear on what happened. You know, for the report. Rick sat up a little straighter. What's there to be clear about? I made a traffic stop. The driver was uncooperative. I secured the scene. End of story? Right. It's just, Nina was asking some questions about the taillight thing. His taillight was out. I saw it. She says both his lights were working when she checked. Rick felt a flicker of irritation. Then it was intermittent. Or I made an honest mistake. Either way, I had reasonable suspicion to make the stop. Sure. I'm just saying we should all have the same story, Bradley's a little nervous about the whole thing. He's worried about paperwork. Tell Bradley to relax. This is routine. We made a stop. There was a misunderstanding about identification. We sorted it out. Nobody got hurt. It's not even worth a full report. That's what I told him. Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure we're all good. After Tom hung up, Rick finished his beer and thought about the report he'd have to write. He'd keep it simple. Traffic stop for equipment violation. Driver failed to immediately identify himself. Minor confrontation. Resolved without incident. Warning issued. Case closed. He didn't think about the gun he'd pulled. He didn't think about how Devin had been completely compliant. He didn't think about the handcuffs or the false accusations or the fear in a federal agent's eyes when a weapon was pointed at his face. Rick had already rewritten the story in his own mind. He was the hero, the cautious officer just trying to stay safe. Devin was the suspicious driver who should have cooperated better. That's the version that felt right to Rick, so that's the version he'd tell. What Rick didn't know was that his version didn't matter anymore. The truth existed independent of his story. It existed in high-definition video and crystal-clear audio, stored securely on multiple drives and backed up to the cloud. The next morning, Devin woke up early. He'd barely slept, his mind churning all night. He got dressed in his suit, kissed Lisa and Kira goodbye, and drove to the FBI field office. His supervisor, Assistant Special Agent in Charge Patricia Yoon, listened to his story with a deepening frown. Then she watched the footage. All of it. When it was over, she sat back in her chair and rubbed her temples. This is bad, she said. I know. This is really bad. A local cop pulled a weapon on one of our agents during a routine traffic stop, for no legitimate reason. What do you want me to do? Devin asked. Patricia looked at him for a long moment. What do you want to do? I want to file a complaint. I want this investigated. I want to make sure Rick Donnelly never does this to anyone else. She nodded slowly. Okay, then that's what we're going to do. But Devin, you need to understand something. This is going to get messy. The police union will get involved. There will be pushback. Your name is going to be in the news. I know. And you're prepared for that? Devin thought about sitting on that curb in handcuffs. He thought about the gun pointed at his face. He thought about his daughter and what kind of world he wanted her to grow up in. Yes, he said. I'm prepared. Patricia picked up her phone. Then let's get started. The complaint process started immediately. Patricia Yoon made calls while Devin sat in her office, each conversation adding weight to what he'd set in motion. First, she called the FBI's Civil Rights Division, then the Office of Professional Responsibility, then finally, the Police Department's Internal Affairs Division. Devin listened to Patricia's side of the conversations, hearing her professional tone shift depending on who she was talking to. With the FBI officials, she was direct and angry. With the police department, she was diplomatic but firm. A federal agent had been threatened at gunpoint during an unlawful traffic stop. This required immediate investigation. When she hung up from the last call, Patricia looked at Devin with an expression he couldn't quite read. Internal Affairs wants to meet with you this afternoon. They're taking this seriously, at least on the surface. Whether that leads anywhere is another question. You don't sound optimistic, she sighed. I've been doing this job for 20 years, Devin. I've seen how these things go. Police departments don't like admitting their officers did something wrong. They'll investigate, sure, but their goal is usually to find a way to justify what happened, not to find the truth. Even with video evidence? Especially with video evidence. They'll pick it apart. They'll say the camera doesn't show everything. They'll say you were acting suspicious off camera. They'll question why you didn't identify yourself immediately. They'll find something, anything, to shift blame away from their officer. Devin felt his determination waver slightly. So what's the point? The point, Patricia said firmly, is that you're not doing this alone. The FBI is behind you. And more importantly, you have something they can't spin away. You have clear, unambiguous footage of an officer pulling a weapon without justification. That's not easy to explain away, no matter how hard they try. She leaned forward. But I need to know you're ready for what comes next. This won't be quick. It won't be easy. They're going to make you the bad guy. They're going to say, you should have handled it differently. Are you ready for that? Devin thought about his conversation with Lisa the night before. Her fears were valid. His fears were valid too. But backing down now felt impossible. I'm ready. The meeting with Internal Affairs was scheduled for 3 o'clock. Devin spent the hours before it reviewing the footage again, taking notes, preparing himself. He called his mother to let her know what was happening. She was quiet for a long time after he told her the story. Baby, I'm proud of you for standing up, she finally said. But I'm scared for you too. These police, they don't like when people challenge them. I know. Mama, your father, God rest his soul, he always said the most dangerous thing a black man can do is demand respect from people who don't want to give it. Devin remembered his father, who died when Devin was in college. He'd been a postal worker, a quiet man who taught his son to keep his head down and work hard. Devin had joined the FBI partly to honor his father's belief in service and duty, but his father had also taught him about dignity. Daddy also taught me to stand up for what's right, Devin said. His mother made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Yes, he did. I just wish doing what's right wasn't so dangerous for people like us. At 2:30, Devin drove to the police headquarters. The building was intimidating by design, all concrete and glass projecting authority and permanence. Inside, the lobby was busy with officers coming and going, civilians waiting to file reports, phones ringing constantly. Devin checked in at the front desk. A young officer behind bulletproof glass took his name and made a call. 5 minutes later, Lieutenant James Kowalski appeared to escort him upstairs. Kowalski was in his 50s, gray-haired and weathered, with the bearing of someone who'd spent his entire career in law enforcement. He shook Devin's hand with a firm grip and led him through security. I want you to know we're taking your complaint very seriously, Kowalski said as they walked through hallways lined with photos of officers. Internal Affairs investigates every allegation, thoroughly and fairly. Devin noticed he said allegation, not incident. Already the framing was different. They entered a small conference room where 2 other people waited. Captain Sandra Martinez from Internal Affairs, and a woman in a suit who introduced herself as Jennifer Park, the department's legal counsel. This was more serious than Devin had expected. The questioning lasted 2 hours. They went through everything moment by moment. When did Officer Donnelly activate his lights? What was Devin's speed? Why was he in that neighborhood? Had he been drinking? Using any substances? Why didn't he immediately identify himself as FBI? Devin answered each question calmly, sticking to the facts. But he could feel the direction they were heading. They were building a case not against Rick Donnelly, but against him. They were looking for anything that would justify Rick's actions. Let me ask you something, Captain Martinez said. When Officer Donnelly approached your vehicle, did you keep your hands visible at all times? Yes. You're certain about that? Completely certain. You can see it on the video. The video shows the exterior of your vehicle and captures audio. It doesn't show everything happening inside your car from Officer Donnelly's perspective. There it was. Patricia had predicted this exactly. They were going to argue that the camera didn't show what Rick saw. Officer Donnelly never claimed I was reaching for anything, Devin said. He pulled his weapon when I told him I was a federal agent and needed to get my credentials. That's your interpretation, Jennifer Park interjected. Officer Donnelly may have perceived a threat based on your movements and demeanor. My demeanor? Devon felt his carefully maintained calm start to crack. I was sitting in my car with my hands on the steering wheel. What threatening demeanor could I possibly have had? Agent Hayes, Lieutenant Kowalski said in a placating tone. Nobody here is saying you did anything wrong. We're just trying to understand the full picture of what happened. But that wasn't true. They were absolutely saying he did something wrong. They just weren't saying it directly. The questioning continued. They asked about his history with law enforcement. Had he ever been pulled over before? Had he ever had negative interactions with police? They were fishing for anything that would paint him as someone with an anti-police bias, someone who might exaggerate what happened. Finally, Devon had enough. Are you going to watch the footage or not? The three officials exchanged glances. We've reviewed the footage, Captain Martinez said. And? And we're still gathering information. This is part of the investigation process. The footage shows everything, Devon said, his frustration bleeding through. It shows Officer Donnelly pulling me over without cause. It shows him pulling a weapon on me when I tried to identify myself. It shows him handcuffing me even after finding my FBI credentials. It shows the other officers discussing how to cover it up. What more information do you need? We need to interview Officer Donnelly and the other officers present, Kowalski said. We need to review any other evidence. We need to determine if department policies were followed. And how long will that take? These investigations can take several weeks, sometimes months. We want to be thorough. Devon stood up. I've told you everything that happened. You have the video evidence. If you're more interested in protecting Officer Donnelly than finding the truth, just say so. Captain Martinez's expression hardened. Agent Hayes, I understand you're upset, but making accusations about our investigation process isn't helpful. Neither is treating me like I'm the one being investigated. Jennifer Park spoke up. Nobody's investigating you. But surely you can understand that we need to look at all sides of the situation. There aren't multiple sides, Devon said. There's what happened, and it's all on video. He left the conference room without waiting to be dismissed. Lieutenant Kowalski followed him out, catching up to him at the elevators. Agent Hayes, wait. Look, I get it. You're frustrated, but you have to understand our position too. If we just throw one of our officers under the bus without a complete investigation, the union will have our heads. We have procedures we have to follow. Your officer pulled a gun on a federal agent during an illegal traffic stop. That's not a complicated situation. The elevator doors opened. Devon stepped inside. Give us time, Kowalski said. Let the process work. As the doors closed, Devon saw Kowalski's expression. It wasn't hostile, but it wasn't sympathetic either. It was the look of someone who'd already decided what conclusion his investigation would reach. Devon drove back to the FBI office feeling deflated. Patricia was waiting for him. How'd it go? About how you predicted. They're more interested in defending their officer than investigating him. Patricia nodded, unsurprised. Then we moved to the next step, which is, we go public. The department isn't going to do the right thing quietly, so we make noise. We make this too big for them to sweep under the rug. Devon sat down heavily. My wife is going to hate this. Your wife is going to be scared. But Devon, think about everyone who's been in your position but didn't have a badge, didn't have video evidence, didn't have the FBI backing them up. They had no voice. You have a voice. Are you willing to use it? He thought about that for a moment, weighing everything he stood to lose against what he might be able to change. Yes, he said finally. Let's do it. The decision to go public wasn't made lightly. That evening, Devon sat at his dining room table with Lisa, laying out what Patricia had proposed. Going to the media meant exposing their family to scrutiny, criticism, and potentially threats. It meant their daughter might hear about this at school. It meant their lives would change in ways they couldn't predict. If we do this, Lisa said slowly, there's no going back. Once your name and face are out there, that's it. You'll be known as the FBI agent who accused a cop of racism. Some people will support you, but others, they'll make you the villain. I know. Your career could be affected. People in law enforcement don't like whistleblowers even when they're in the right. I know that too. Lisa was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the table. What does your gut tell you? That if I stay quiet, nothing changes. Rick Donnelly keeps his job, keeps his badge, and keeps pulling over people who look like me. And next time, maybe someone doesn't have a camera. Maybe someone makes a wrong move and ends up dead, and I'll know I could have done something and didn't. So you've already decided? I have, but I need to know you're with me on this. I won't do it if you're not. Lisa reached across the table and took his hand. I'm terrified, but I'm also angry. I'm angry that you have to even think about this. I'm angry that being right isn't enough, that you have to fight just to be believed. So yes, I'm with you. But promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll be careful. That you won't let this consume you. That no matter what happens, we're still a family first. I promise. They told Kira together the next morning before school. They kept it simple, age-appropriate. Daddy had a problem with a police officer who wasn't being fair, and he was going to talk to some people about it. She might hear things at school. If anyone said anything mean, she should tell her teacher or come home and talk to them. Kira, 9 years old and already more perceptive than they gave her credit for, looked at her father with worried eyes. Is the police officer going to hurt you, Daddy? The question broke Devin's heart. No, baby. I'm going to be fine. I promise. Okay. She hugged him tight before heading out to catch the school bus. Later that morning, Patricia connected Devin with a local investigative journalist named Andrew Chen. Andrew had a reputation for covering police misconduct cases and had won several awards for his reporting on civil rights issues. They met at a coffee shop in a quiet part of town. Andrew was younger than Devin expected, probably in his early 30s, with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything. After introductions, he pulled out a notebook and recorder. Before we start, I need to be clear about something, Andrew said. If you do this interview, if you let me publish this story, you're going to face backlash. The police union will attack your credibility. People will dig into your past looking for anything they can use against you. Social media will be brutal. Are you prepared for that? Everyone keeps asking me that, Devin said. And honestly, I don't think anyone can be fully prepared for it. But I'm willing to face it. Fair enough. So tell me what happened. Devin walked through the entire incident again, and this time it felt different. He wasn't being interrogated or questioned. Andrew listened without judgment, occasionally asking for clarification, but mostly just letting Devin tell his story. When Devin mentioned the video evidence, Andrew's eyes lit up. You have footage of the entire encounter? Everything. From the moment he pulled me over to when he gave me that fake citation. Can I see it? Devin had brought his laptop. They moved to a corner table where they could have more privacy, and Devin played the footage. Andrew watched intently, making notes. When Officer Rick Donnelly pulled his weapon, Andrew's jaw tightened. When the handcuffs went on, he shook his head. After the video ended, Andrew sat back. This is damning. This is absolutely damning. He had no cause for any of that. That's what I've been saying. What did the police department say when they saw this? Devin explained the internal affairs meeting, the defensive questions, the obvious attempt to find justification for Rick's actions. Andrew nodded, like he'd heard it all before. Standard playbook. They'll delay the investigation, hope this blows over, and eventually find that the officer's actions were within policy guidelines. Maybe he'll get a written reprimand at worst. Meanwhile, you're supposed to just accept it and move on. That's not happening. Good. Andrew closed his notebook. I'm going to write this story. I'm going to include the video, and I'm going to publish it in the next 48 hours. Once it's out, things are going to move fast. Are you ready? Devin thought about his daughter's worried face that morning. His wife's fear. His mother's prayers. His father's lessons about dignity and courage. I'm ready. The story published 2 days later on a Friday morning. Andrew's article was thorough and hard-hitting, laying out exactly what happened with embedded video footage. The headline read, FBI agent held at gunpoint during traffic stop while trying to identify himself. Within an hour, the article had been shared hundreds of times on social media. By noon, it had gone viral. Local news stations picked it up. National news outlets started calling. The video of Officer Rick Donnelly pointing his gun at Devin, of Devin sitting handcuffed on the curb, spread across the internet like wildfire. Devin's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters wanted interviews. Civil rights organizations wanted to offer support. The FBI's Public Affairs Office was fielding hundreds of inquiries. Patricia had to assign someone just to handle the media requests, but the backlash came just as swiftly. The police union issued a statement within hours, defending Officer Donnelly and accusing the media of rushing to judgment without knowing all the facts. They claimed the video was taken out of context, that it didn't show everything that happened, that Devon had been uncooperative and suspicious. The union president, a barrel-chested man named Frank Morrison, gave a press conference that afternoon. "This is a classic example of Monday morning quarterbacking," he said. Officer Donnelly was doing his job, protecting his community and making a traffic stop. The driver refused to comply with lawful orders. Officer Donnelly acted appropriately given the circumstances. Now the media wants to turn him into some kind of villain because they have an agenda. Devon watched the press conference from his living room, Lisa sitting beside him. His blood boiled at the lies, the spin, the complete denial of what the video clearly showed. "He refused to comply?" Lisa said incredulously. "You did everything he asked." "It doesn't matter what I actually did. They're going to say whatever makes their officer look justified." Social media was even worse. The comment sections were battlegrounds. Some people supported Devon, calling Officer Donnelly racist and demanding his termination, but others attacked Devon viciously. They said he was playing the race card. They said he should have just complied better. They questioned why he was in that neighborhood in the first place. Some comments were openly racist, using slurs and making threats. Devon tried not to read them, but it was impossible to completely avoid. Each hateful comment felt like a punch. These people didn't know him, had never met him, but they'd already decided he was lying, exaggerating, making problems where none existed. That evening, there was a news van parked outside their house. A reporter tried to approach Devon when he went to get the mail. He declined to comment and went back inside. "Is this what it's going to be like now?" Kira asked, watching through the window. "Just for a little while," Devon said, hoping it was true. "Then people will move on to the next story." But he knew it wouldn't be that simple. This wasn't just another news story. This had become a symbol, a flashpoint in the ongoing national conversation about police conduct and racial profiling. Devon was no longer just himself. He'd become a representative of something larger. The weekend was surreal. More news coverage, more social media debates, more statements from various organizations. Civil rights groups held a rally outside the police headquarters demanding accountability. Counter-protesters showed up waving Blue Lives Matter flags. The police department released a statement saying the investigation was ongoing, and they couldn't comment on pending matters. On Monday morning, Devon received a call from his supervisor. Patricia's voice was tense. "The police chief wants to meet. He's requesting you be there along with FBI leadership. Tomorrow at 10. What do you think he wants? Either to apologize and announce real accountability, or to try to pressure us into backing down. My money's on the second one. Should I go? Absolutely. But we're bringing lawyers. If they want to play hardball, we'll play harder." That night, Devon couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about that meeting, about what the police chief might say, about how much his life had changed in just a few days. A week ago, he was just an FBI agent doing his job, living his life. Now he was the center of a national controversy. Lisa rolled over and found him staring at the ceiling. "Can't sleep. Too much going through my head. Regrets?" He thought about that. Did he regret going public? The stress, the threats, the scrutiny? "No," he said finally. "No regrets. I'm scared about what comes next, but I don't regret doing this." Good. Because whether you regret it or not, we're in it now. Might as well see it through. She was right. There was no turning back. The story was out. The video was... The meeting at police headquarters was scheduled for 10 in the morning, but the media circus started hours earlier. News vans lined the street outside. Reporters with cameras set up their shots with the imposing building as a backdrop. Protesters had already gathered, holding signs demanding justice. Police officers watched from the steps, their expressions hard and defensive. Devon arrived with a full team. Patricia Yoon, 2 FBI attorneys and a representative from the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. They were escorted through a side entrance to avoid the media, but Devon could still hear the shouts from the crowd outside. Police Chief Raymond Butler met them in a large conference room on the 3rd floor. He was in his late 50s, distinguished-looking with silver hair and a pressed uniform heavy with medals and commendations. With him sat Captain Martinez from Internal Affairs, the police union president Frank Morrison, and 3 lawyers. The sides of the table couldn't have been clearer. Federal versus local, Devon versus the system that had failed him. Chief Butler started with pleasantries, thanking everyone for coming, expressing his commitment to transparency and accountability. But Devon could read the subtext. This wasn't about accountability. This was about damage control. "Let me be direct," Butler said, his diplomatic tone dropping. "This situation has gotten out of hand. What should have been a routine internal investigation has turned into a media circus that's damaging the reputation of this department and the morale of our officers." "With all due respect, Chief," Patricia responded, "the media coverage is a result of what happened, not the cause of the problem. Your officer pulled a weapon on a federal agent during an unlawful traffic stop. That's your characterization," Frank Morrison cut in. "Officer Donnelly made a legal traffic stop and responded to what he perceived as a threat." "There was no threat," Devon said. "The video shows that clearly." "The video shows part of what happened," one of the police lawyers interjected. "It doesn't show Officer Donnelly's full perspective, what he was seeing and experiencing in that moment." And there it was, the same argument they'd been making from the beginning. The video wasn't enough. The clear evidence of misconduct somehow wasn't clear enough. What perspective justifies pulling a gun on someone who's sitting still with their hands on the steering wheel? Devon asked. What perspective makes that reasonable? Chief Butler held up his hand. Agent Hayes, nobody here is saying you weren't treated poorly. But you have to understand our officers put their lives on the line every day. They have to make split-second decisions in potentially dangerous situations. This wasn't a dangerous situation until Officer Donnelly made it one. That's your opinion, Morrison said. Officer Donnelly felt threatened. He acted to protect himself. That's his right under department policy and the law. The meeting went in circles for an hour. The police department's position was clear. Rick Donnelly had done nothing wrong. If Devon felt he was treated unfairly, that was unfortunate, but it wasn't cause for discipline. At most, they might consider some additional training for the officers involved. Devon felt his frustration building with every word. They were looking at the same video he was, hearing the same audio, and somehow reaching completely different conclusions. Finally, the FBI attorney spoke up. Chief Butler, let me make something very clear. The FBI doesn't accept your characterization of this incident. We believe Officer Donnelly engaged in racial profiling, made an unlawful traffic stop, and used excessive force against a federal agent. If your internal investigation doesn't reach appropriate conclusions, we will pursue this through the Department of Justice. Butler's expression hardened. Are you threatening federal intervention? We're promising it. The meeting ended shortly after that, with both sides retreating to their corners. As Devon and his team left through the side entrance, reporters somehow spotted them. Questions flew like arrows. Agent Hayes, are you satisfied with the police department's response? Do you think Officer Donnelly should be fired? Is this about race? Patricia guided Devon past them without answering, but the questions followed them to their cars. One reporter managed to get close enough that Devon could see his press badge. It was Andrew Chen, the journalist who'd broken the story. Agent Hayes, just one question. What do you want to see happen here? Devon stopped against Patricia's advice. He looked at the cameras, at the reporters, at the protesters still gathered outside. This was his chance to speak directly to everyone watching. I want what anyone would want in this situation. I want accountability. I want the truth to matter. I want officers who abuse their authority to face consequences, so they don't do it again to someone else. That's it. That's all I'm asking for. The clip played on every news station within the hour. I want the truth to matter. It became a soundbite, a rallying cry. People shared it, quoted it, printed it on signs at protests. But the backlash intensified too. That evening, someone leaked Devon's personal information online. His address, his phone number, his wife's workplace. The practice was called doxing, and it was meant to intimidate, to punish, to make him regret speaking out. The threats started almost immediately. Phone calls at all hours, emails full of hate, social media messages promising violence. Most were probably empty threats from keyboard warriors. But some felt real enough that the FBI took them seriously. They assigned protection to Devon's family. A patrol car stationed outside their house. This is insane, Lisa said, watching the patrol car through their window. We need protection in our own home because you told the truth? I'm sorry, Devon said. I never meant for it to affect you and Kira like this. Don't apologize for doing the right thing. I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at them. At all the people who think threatening a family is acceptable behavior. Kira had to be escorted to and from school by FBI agents. Other parents stared. Some kids asked her questions. Why was her dad on TV? Why were people so mad at him? She handled it with more grace than Devin expected, but he could see the stress in her eyes. The story dominated local news for days. National outlets picked it up. Cable news shows debated it. Everyone had an opinion. Some supported Devin completely. Others defended Officer Donnelly. Most people fell somewhere in the middle, uncomfortable with what the video showed but unwilling to condemn a police officer outright. 1 week after the story broke, a civil rights organization organized a march in downtown. Thousands of people showed up carrying signs and chanting. Devin was invited to speak, but he declined. This wasn't about him becoming a celebrity or an activist figure. This was about one incident and holding one officer accountable. But whether he wanted it or not, Devin had become a symbol. People projected onto him their own experiences with police, their own frustrations with the system, their own hopes for change. Some saw him as a hero. Others saw him as a troublemaker. Few saw him as what he actually was, just a man trying to do the right thing. The pressure was immense. News outlets wanted interviews. Organizations wanted him to speak at events. Lawyers approached him about civil lawsuits. Everyone wanted a piece of him, wanted to use his story for their own purposes. Through it all, Devin tried to maintain focus on the one thing that mattered, getting justice for what had happened to him and making sure it didn't happen to others. 2 weeks after going public, he received an unexpected phone call. It was Officer Bradley Chen, one of the backup officers who'd responded that night. "Agent Hayes, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from," Bradley said, "but I need to talk to you. Can we meet somewhere?" They met at the same park where Devin had pulled over after the incident. Bradley looked nervous, constantly glancing around like he expected someone to see them. "I haven't been able to sleep since that night," Bradley admitted. "What Rick did to you, what we all did by just going along with it, it's been eating at me. What do you want from me?" Devin asked. "Nothing. I don't want anything. I just wanted you to know that not all of us agree with how this has been handled. Some of us know Rick was wrong. Some of us know the department is protecting him because they're scared of the union and scared of admitting fault. Then why aren't you saying that publicly?" Bradley looked down. "Because I have a family too. Because if I speak up, I'll lose my job. The union will destroy me. I'm not brave like you." "I'm not brave," Devin said. "I'm just tired of being afraid. I'm testifying honestly in the internal investigation," Bradley said. "I can't go public, but I won't lie to protect Rick anymore. That's all I can offer." After Bradley left, Devin sat on a park bench and watched the sunset. One officer had the courage to at least be honest, even if he couldn't be public about it. That was something. Small, but something. The media firestorm continued for another week, but gradually, as these things do, it began to fade. News stories emerged. Other controversies took over the news cycle. The protesters moved on to other causes. The cameras left Devin's neighborhood, but the investigation continued, and Devin knew that the real battle was just beginning. The public attention had forced the department to take this seriously. But now came the hard part, actually getting accountability in a system designed to protect its own. The waiting was almost worse than the chaos had been. At least during the media storm, something was happening. The internal investigation took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of Devin going to work every day, trying to focus on his regular duties while knowing his complaint was being dissected by people who had every incentive to dismiss it. 6 weeks of waiting for phone calls that never came, updates that were vague at best, reassurances that felt hollow. Patricia kept in contact with the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division throughout. They'd opened their own investigation, independent of the local police department's internal review. That was the backup plan, the federal hammer that could come down if the local process failed. Finally, on a Tuesday morning in late autumn, Patricia called Devin into her office. "The internal investigation is complete," she said. "Chief Butler wants to announce the findings at a press conference this afternoon. They've agreed to let us review the results 1 hour beforehand. That's not much time." "No, it's not, but it's something. The fact that they're holding a press conference at all means they're taking this seriously. Whether that translates to real accountability, we'll see." At 2 o'clock, Devin sat in Patricia's office with 2 FBI attorneys, reading the investigation report. It was 50 pages long, dense with police jargon and careful language. But the conclusions were clear. Officer Rick Donnelly had violated department policy in multiple ways. The traffic stop lacked probable cause. His use of force was excessive and unjustified. His subsequent report contained false statements. The investigation found that Officer Donnelly had engaged in conduct unbecoming of an officer and had violated Devon's civil rights. The recommended discipline: immediate termination. Devon read that line 3 times, barely believing it. They were actually recommending that Rick be fired. But there was more. Officers Tom Bradford and Nina Reeves received suspensions without pay for failing to intervene and for supporting Rick's false version of events in their initial reports. Officer Bradley Chen received a written reprimand for failing to immediately report the misconduct, though the report noted his subsequent cooperation with the investigation. Patricia looked up from her copy of the report. "This is better than I expected. Much better. They're actually holding him accountable." "Will the chief accept the recommendation?" Devon asked. "That's what we're about to find out." The press conference was held in the police headquarters main lobby. Every local news station was there, along with reporters from national outlets who'd been following the story since it broke. Devon stood in the back with Patricia and the FBI team, watching as Chief Butler took the podium. Butler looked tired, older than he had during their contentious meeting weeks ago. The weight of the situation showed on his face. Behind him stood the mayor, several city council members, and representatives from community organizations. "Thank you all for being here," Butler began. "Over the past 6 weeks, our Internal Affairs Division has conducted a thorough investigation into the incident involving FBI Special Agent Devon Hayes and Officer Rick Donnelly. I want to be clear from the outset. We take allegations of misconduct seriously, and this investigation was comprehensive and fair." He paused, looking down at his notes. Devon held his breath. The investigation concluded that Officer Donnelly violated multiple department policies during his interaction with Agent Hayes. The traffic stop lacked proper justification. The use of force was excessive given the circumstances, and the subsequent reporting of the incident contained inaccuracies that cannot be overlooked. A murmur went through the crowd of reporters. Cameras flashed. Devon felt Lisa squeeze his hand. She'd insisted on being there, standing beside him for this moment. "Effective immediately," Butler continued, his voice steady but strained. "Officer Rick Donnelly has been terminated from the police department. This decision was not made lightly, but the evidence is clear. His actions fell far below the standards we expect from our officers." The room erupted with questions, but Butler held up his hand. "Additionally, Officers Tom Bradford and Nina Reeves have been suspended without pay for 30 days for failing to intervene and for initially supporting a false narrative of events. They will undergo mandatory retraining before returning to duty." Butler went on to outline a series of reforms the department would implement: mandatory body cameras for all officers, enhanced training on de-escalation and implicit bias, a civilian oversight board to review complaints of misconduct, regular audits of traffic stops to identify patterns of potential profiling. When Butler finished, he looked directly at the back of the room where Devon stood. "Agent Hayes, on behalf of the entire department, I want to offer you a formal apology. What happened to you should never have happened. You were treated unjustly, and for that I am deeply sorry. I hope these actions demonstrate our commitment to ensuring nothing like this occurs again." The reporters turned, cameras swinging to capture Devon's reaction. He wasn't prepared for this moment, hadn't thought about what he'd say if justice actually came. Patricia nodded at him, encouraging. Devon stepped forward, moving through the crowd until he stood near the podium. The cameras were on him now, microphones thrust in his direction. "Thank you, Chief Butler," Devon said, his voice catching slightly. "This outcome, these reforms, they're important. But they only happened because there was video evidence. They only happened because the story went public and pressure was applied. How many people have been in my situation without cameras? Without the FBI backing them up? Without the media attention?" He paused, looking at the faces in the crowd, at the officers standing at attention along the walls, at his wife watching him with tears in her eyes. Real change isn't just about punishing one officer who got caught. It's about transforming a system that allowed this to happen in the first place. It's about creating a culture where officers feel comfortable speaking up when they see wrongdoing, instead of protecting each other. It's about teaching every police officer that the badge is a responsibility, not a shield. Devin's voice grew stronger as he continued. I'm glad Officer Donnelly is facing consequences. I'm glad there will be reforms. But I'm also sad that it took all of this, that I had to put my family through threats and harassment just to get basic accountability. That shouldn't be necessary. The system should work the first time, every time, for everyone. The questions came rapid fire after that. Was he satisfied with the outcome? Would he pursue a civil lawsuit? Did he think Rick Donnelly should face criminal charges? Devin answered what he could, deflected what he couldn't, and tried to stay focused on the larger message. Yes, he was satisfied that justice had been served in this case. Yes, the Department of Justice was still reviewing whether federal charges were appropriate. No, this wasn't about revenge or money. It was about accountability and change. After the press conference, Devin and Lisa drove home in silence. The weight of everything that had happened over the past 2 months was finally hitting him. The fear, the anger, the stress, the small victory they'd just witnessed, it all crashed over him at once. You did it, Lisa said quietly as they pulled into their driveway. You actually did it. We did it, Devin corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. Inside, Kira was doing homework at the kitchen table, an FBI agent assigned to their protection detail sitting nearby reading a book. When she saw them, Kira jumped up. Did the bad police officer get in trouble? Devin picked up his daughter and held her tight. Yes, baby. He got in trouble. He's not going to be a police officer anymore. Good, Kira said firmly. He was mean to you. Later that evening, after Kira had gone to bed, Devin sat on his back porch watching the stars. His phone had been buzzing constantly with messages of congratulations and support. Civil rights leaders were calling this a watershed moment. Legal experts were analyzing the implications. Community activists were celebrating and demanding similar accountability in their own cities. But Devin felt strangely empty. Justice had been served, yes. But at what cost? His family had been threatened. His sense of safety had been shattered. His faith in the system he'd sworn to serve had been tested in ways he never anticipated. His mother called, her voice thick with emotion. I'm so proud of you, baby. Your father would be proud too. Thanks, Mama. But Devin, promise me something. Promise me you'll be careful. You've made powerful enemies. Some police officers aren't going to like what happened here. I know, but I also made allies. Officers like Bradley Chen who want to do the right thing. They just need to see it's possible. In the weeks that followed, the reforms Chief Butler promised began to take shape. Body cameras were ordered. Training curricula were revised. The Civilian Oversight Board held its first meeting. It wasn't perfect and it wasn't fast enough. But it was something. Devin received a letter from Officer Bradley Chen. It was handwritten, brief, but heartfelt. Thank you for having the courage I didn't. Watching what happened to you and how you handled it has changed how I think about this job. I'm not going to be silent anymore when I see something wrong. I promise you that. Devin kept that letter in his desk drawer at work. On hard days when the cynicism crept back in, he'd read it and remembered that change was possible. Slow, difficult, painful change, but possible nonetheless. Rick Donnelly didn't go quietly. He appealed his termination through the police union,